class, in this lecture video I'm going to be going over Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find and Toni Morrison's Recitatif. So let's go ahead and turn to Canvas. Okay, so a little bit about Flannery O'Connor. So Flannery O'Connor is known for her very dark short stories. She's really she's a deeply religious Roman Catholic woman, but she is very fascinated with human nature and also just this kind of existentialist idea that came out of, post-World War II life. So this was published in 1955, so again, post-World War II. And really this is a time in which people were still asking these existential questions. Is there a God? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is the meaning of life, right? And out of this existentialism came nihilism, this really deep belief that nothing matters, there is no morality, why even bother, right, if nothing matters? And so she really tries to look at these ideas in her stories and really look at, good versus evil, kind of just the complicated nature of human nature, really. Also during this time, just keep in mind, we're dealing with the Cold War, the Red Scare, nuclear war threat. There's really a deep fear in American society of communism, a second rise of fascism. Tied into that is that Flannery O'Connor is talking about the Deep South, where she's from. And in the South, you have obviously this prevalent racism and also this complete obsession with the past, right? This idea of nostalgia. And in the South, you still have people that are deeply rooted in their ideas of the Confederacy and the connection to the Confederacy. And so, Flannery O'Connor saw this as a very toxic thing in America. And also, you've got the rise of suburban life, the rise of conservatism in the United States. And again, it was for her, she felt was very contradictory, right? You have these people that claim to be Christians, that claim to be good people, and that they're doing these atrocious things to each other. And so she really looks into that in this story. And so in the story, you've got this older woman, the matriarch of the family, the grandmother, and she's on a car ride with her son, his wife, and their two kids. And there's no one in the story that you like. Everyone is awful. And that's what makes this story so interesting, right? There is no hero. There's an anti-hero, though, and he's fascinating, and that's the misfit. So just a little bit about the grandmother. She's a hypocrite. She's a racist. She's selfish. She's gullible. She's awful. And she's really the catalyst that causes this whole problem, right? She just has led them into the lion's den, so to speak. And really, so there's this idea of karma, right, coming back at her and her family. And her family's pretty awful, too. The kids are brats. The wife is kind of silly. And the husband's he ignores everybody. He's awful. He really doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't follow directions. The whole thing's a mess. And so anyway, so you've got this misfit who's really this he could epitomize nihilism. He also epitomizes the kind of the darker side of conservatism, the darker side of, religion. If you want to think of the grandmother as the angel, the misfit is the devil, right? The two on the shoulder that are opposing. But the misfit also represents in American culture this kind of time when these grifters and these drifters were kind of roaming the streets, and people were really afraid of people that didn't follow along with the status quo. You could almost think of the misfit almost as a member of Howl, one of the characters in Howl from Ginsberg's poem, is really someone wandering around. And it's interesting because the misfit, even though he's the evil character, the anti-hero, is very deep. He really is a thoughtful person, but he's so evil, right? And so I love in the scene at the end where he shoots her, and his friend says, "She was a talker, wasn't she?" And then the misfit says, "She would have been a good woman if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life," right? The fact that she doesn't become a good person until her life is threatened, that it took that to make her realize that she's awful, right? And that she should change. And then the guy says, "Some fun," and the misfit says, "Shut up. There's no real pleasure in life." And again, this is kind of an ode to this idea of at their core, I think Flannery O'Connor is saying that most people are awful. She just doesn't have much faith in human nature, right? Especially because people are capable of such horrific things and go against their own belief systems. Okay, now let's talk about Toni Morrison's Recitatif. So moving down here. Okay, so it's an interesting story. It's about two orphans, right? And it was written in 1983. And one of the big cores of the story is that, and it's the only short story that Toni Morrison has ever written. But part of what she's doing is she's trying to get you to figure out who is who, right? Like that's the big question in the story is like, which one of these women is a woman of color and which one is white? Because we know one of them is, but we can't figure it out. And so it really tests your ideas of your stereotypes. Morrison's really playing with your head. It's kind of fun. But at the core of it, it's also about these women and dealing with the pressures of the time and of the society, right? They both grew up in this orphanage, and we learn about this woman, Maggie, who works at the orphanage, and she's older. She's got some disability, and they used to pick on her. It was pretty awful. They were pretty mean to her, and the two girls really took pleasure in it, torturing her, so to speak. And the two girls are Roberta, who does not support integration. She's outside with a sign protesting the schools kind of integrating and mixing the two races together in the school. So she's really anti that. She's the one that really wanted to hurt Maggie and really has something against her. And she really saw herself in Maggie. And she's sick, so we know that. She's not well read. She's, possibly illiterate. She was an F student. She was obsessed with Jimi Hendrix, and we know that she's a single mother. So these are the kind of things that we know about the two characters. And then there's Twyla, and Twyla is also a single mother. She's trapped kind of in her marriage. Well, she was trapped in her marriage. She was also not the best student. She's kind of pro-Black Pride, and she had a mother who's the one that dropped her off that kind of was, we know, a partier, right? And Twyla's really the narrator of the story. But the whole story like has us thinking about, us versus them, power dynamics, groupthink, and things that will make people do pretty awful things like what happened to Maggie, right? And that's really where the two girls connect, is on what happened to this woman, Maggie. And really Maggie could be a representation of, I don't know, just the struggle of people, the struggle of people who are on the borders, the people who are unwanted in society for whatever reason. So anyway, okay, I hope that helps you guys with unveiling these two stories, and I'll see you soon.